And that is called production value. That's what we've been working towards our entire life, is production value. I am Ash Hamilton from horror-fix.com, and tonight is Night Terrors Radio. We have Jim Chandler.
Hello.
Ever-present co-host. John Gardner.
How's it going?
Also ever-present co-host. They're both late.
A little shaky.
It was not late.
But you know what? I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter one bit. So I'm busting my hump trying to get this stuff ready
Doesn't sound
for our
like
distinguished guest tonight.
That's right.
Feels like you're bitter.
We have a great guest on tonight. In fact, we have a back-to-back show tonight. We're going to be here all night. Hope you guys have anything to do.
Yes.
I know, John, you have to work tonight, right?
I do have to work tonight.
Better call in. We've got a back-to-back show on tonight.
Whoops.
We have got for our first guest, you know what we're going to talk about tonight? Anybody have an idea?
Scary stuff.
You guys have an idea?
Ooh.
We are going to talk
I didn't even get to guess.
about the paranormal
Yes.
tonight. We are going to talk about ghosts tonight.
Awesome.
Clarissa, can you see my distinguished co-hosts? Jim Chandler, John Gardner,
Very sorry about that.
in the house.
Am I distinguished?
Now, you're getting such a treat tonight, Clarissa. Not only were we able to get you on 20 minutes late, which we reserve only for our most special guests, you are able to see our entirely new setup tonight. In fact, even the intro that you saw is completely new. This is all for you. It's all in your honor. I hope you recognize all that we've went through tonight just for you, Clarissa. This is the same kind of horrible Jewish guilt that I put my wife through almost on a daily basis. I did all of this for you. Clarissa Vasquez is the author of books. She has been a guest on many paranormal podcasts, as well as the ever-popular Coast to Coast. You're on Coast to Coast, Clarissa.
That's awesome.
That's an apex achievement there. We don't get that.
Yeah.
That's definitely an apex achievement. So, you've got a list of credits to your name. You got a lot of stuff going on that we want to try to scratch the surface of tonight.
Sounds good to me. Bring it.
Let's do it.
So, first of all, tell people a little bit about your background, where you're coming from, like how did you get into the field? You know, I'm going to give you the time for your entire life.
Well, it all started well over 20 years ago when I was active duty in the military. And I had my first ghostly encounter while I was enlisted. Didn't occur to me at all to be frightened by it. I was just really confused by what I had seen and experienced. And the internet was still in its infancy. Paranormal TV wasn't a thing. So I went off base, got a library card, and started reading every book I could get my hands on about ghosts and trying to make heads or tails of what I had experienced. And started reading about some tips and tricks on how to do some amateur investigating. And I started doing that, running around with a Polaroid camera and a clunky analog tape recorder. And a couple of decades later, I am the founder of one of the longest running teams in the state of Colorado, the Colorado Coalition of Paranormal Investigators. We're wrapping up our 15th year of existence.
Wow.
And we serve western Colorado and eastern Utah here in the U.S. And it's been a wild ride, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Very cool.
Nice.
So you're definitely a Colorado native then.
Yes, born and raised.
Nice.
Now, I love... Okay, no, this is going to prove just how Midwestern I am. But I spent a brief period of time in Colorado and then went back a few years ago. And the one thing that I've noticed is that Colorado doesn't give one shit about barometric pressure. You guys have next to no humidity. I mean, it's horribly hot in the summer. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I was in the Denver area for almost a year. And I noticed that, like, you have to hydrate in Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
But it's tricky because you walk out and you're like, hey, I'm not totally sweating like in Illinois.
Right.
I don't feel that. I don't feel the hot hands of death around my throat yet like in Illinois. I'm going to walk 10 city blocks like in Illinois. City block 8, I start losing my vision. because I have not hydrated, and it's 110 degrees, but it does not feel 110 degrees
'cause it's a
in
dry.
Colorado. That's why I love Colorado. I love Colorado. I love the Southwest. I don't like my state, Clarissa. I don't like it one bit. So we can make fun of the Midwest ad nauseum
when
tonight.
it's 90 degrees here, it actually feels like it's 90 degrees. But the reason you were probably losing your vision after walking 8 blocks may not have been due to barometric pressure and humidity. It could have been due to altitude, because most of the state is a mile above sea level or higher.
It could also be onset glaucoma, which luckily, being in Colorado, I could take care of while I was there.
That's right.
Yeah, we can treat that here.
I also noticed something very strange when I was in Colorado. I noticed that, of course there are a lot of medical marijuana dispensaries there, but at the same time I noticed that there was a lot of diagnostic drug testing labs that were all going out of business. Like in downtown Denver, you'll see a medical marijuana dispenser on one side of the street, and then like Quest Diagnostics abandoned and run down on the other side of the street, totally closed up. Which is why you guys, I guess, are experiencing a surplus in your economy.
The medical dispensaries are even going out of business now that recreational has been legalized. People don't have to fake illnesses and injuries in order to get their green card anymore. We can buy it and smoke it legally here.
They were faking illnesses. What?
Oh, a lot of people were faking illnesses and injuries just to get that that green recreation card or medical marijuana card. Yeah.
I mean, we'll fake it just to get out of work. So the fact that we would fake it for other reasons is fairly obvious.
I fake a lot of things. A lot.
So, interestingly enough, when I was looking through like your dossier, looking through your bio, you were talking about a very scientific approach to the paranormal. Am I correct?
Yes. Yes.
Let's spend a little bit of time on that, because I think when people think about the paranormal, and I hate that this happens, but it happens very often. I think first of all, mass populace, mainstream, even mainstream media really isn't educated on what people think paranormal is. And I think they're definitely not educated on the way that people try to gauge or measure it. So give us an idea of what a scientific approach to the paranormal and investigating the paranormal looks like.
Well, first of all, the term paranormal encompasses more than just ghosts. It encompasses anything that cannot be rationally explained utilizing the scientific method. So that includes UFOs, it includes cryptozoological creatures, it includes extrasensory abilities, anything that is not duplicated using scientific methods. So paranormal is a really broad investigation spectrum. My forte, if you will, happens to be ghostology. And so I follow the premise, and as does my team, that you cannot, quote unquote, prove the paranormal with the paranormal. Therefore, we do our very best to utilize the scientific method using technology and equipment, as opposed to psychic mediums, divination techniques and stuff like that, which cannot be backed up with credible data.
Now, have you seen much that you can't explain, or, I mean, can you explain a lot? If somebody will call and say, "Hey, we want you to investigate something," and you get there and it's like, "Okay, we found this and this." Are there times when you go places and you just can't explain something?
Yeah, we're able to, about 99% of the time, we're able to go in and debunk what is going on, in that we're able to go and find a naturally occurring explanation for what is being experienced at that location.
Okay.
And so it's that 1% that really, keeps the fire lit under our backsides and keeps us going, because that's the icing on the cake for us. Being able to go into someone's home or business or personal space and first of all let them know, you're not crazy, we believe you are experiencing something, and then to go in and say, okay, this is what you're experiencing, this is what's causing it. That for us makes it well worth it, because we're able to provide a service and assist our clients and give them some peace of mind. But it's that 1%, where we catch something that we cannot rationally or logically explain, or when we get data that indicates that what is being experienced is paranormal in nature. That's the icing on the cake for us.
So now, do you log some of this stuff? Do you say, hey, this 1% is something we don't normally experience? Have you kept a record of those things? Or
Yeah, we have very detailed records to include GPS coordinates and other data points that we keep, because ultimately my organization, we want to try to find data that correlates. We want to see the why behind the what. And so, one of the theories that we're exploring and have been exploring for the last 5 years or so is ley lines. The mythical underground lines that supposedly run through the earth and project energy and either enhance or enable elevated paranormal activity, and whether it be cryptozoological, ghosts, or extraterrestrial.
Wow.
And so, we log and plot the GPS coordinates for all of our cases where we have data that we cannot rationally explain. And, hopefully, ultimately, with that, we'll be able to, provide some sort of explanation. Right now, the majority of that data runs along rivers, lakes, streams, stuff where there's a really high water concentration. And water, as we know, conducts electricity. And one of the really popular theories among the ghostologists or ghost hunters, if you will, is that ghosts either create, manipulate, or utilize electromagnetic energy in order to manifest or materialize. And so it's really interesting for us to see that these points along the map where we've got data that we cannot rationally explain that does indicate that there is probably paranormal activity going on at that location does coincide with large bodies of water.
Now, we've heard...
Oh, sorry.
We have heard instances of not just water affecting the paranormal, but we've also heard, strangely enough, stuff like quartz. Now, what is your take on something like quartz, for example, these deposits?
Well, quartz is scientifically proven to amplify and help transmit radio waves. And so radio waves are another form of energy. They're wave energy. And so it would stand to reason that quartz could potentially amplify or help to transmit the energy that paranormal entities either utilize or manipulate in order to manifest. Geological composition of the areas that we investigate, that is one of the things that we look into, in addition to solar activity, geomagnetic activity, lunar phase, even, weather patterns and barometric pressure.
That's interesting. It's also interesting. I've heard people talk about infrasound. I've heard people also talk about infrasound in relationship to the parietal lobe. Is that stuff that you look into as well? I've also heard people talk about susceptibility with lesions on the brain. Well, what's your take on some of that?
There are people that are super susceptible. We call them hypersensitive to electromagnetic fields. One of my investigators has a natural electromagnetic field that is so intense that she can't wear wristwatches, and she burns out an iPhone every few months. Wow. Just from her natural EMF. It's really fun to take our meters and run them over her to see how high
Nice.
the meters will go. But there, on the flip side of that coin, there are people that are hypersensitive to those energies. As far as brain lesions and stuff like that, I'm not seeing a lot of data yet that can give us any kind of idea whether there's any tangibility to it. But who knows? We're testing new theories and new ideas and new hypotheses all the time. And so that may be something that's coming down the pike with more research.
Now, how long have you been doing active investigations, Clarissa?
I have been actively investigating since 1996.
1996. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we look at TV, when we look at because let's face it, the paranormal business is still big business. A lot of people out there, regardless of their intentions, are making it, and I call it a metric shit ton. I don't know if we have the correct measurements
There might be a
for
US
that,
shit ton, though. I think it's
but
larger.
I do call it the metric shit ton of money. Whether or not we want to think that this is an altruistic venture, a lot of people are making money off of it. Now, mind you, a lot of people are making money off of it, and then they're putting that money back into the industry, which I don't see as a bad thing either. I do think it's a double-edged sword. Since '96, what kind of changes have you actually seen in the industry? Because obviously it goes through waves where it experiences popularity, and then that popularity wanes. What have you seen, and where do you think we are now?
There have been some really, really good changes in the field, and there have been some really, really bad changes in the field. A couple of the good changes are the technology that we have available that we didn't have available 23 years ago. Again, when I first started, I was running around with an analog tape recorder and a Polaroid camera. Now we have, thermal cameras and infrared camera systems and digital audio recorders instead of, the big clunky analog tape recorders. You have to flip the tape every 30 minutes. That has been a really good change in the field. Another change in the field as a result of paranormal TV has been the removal of the stigma attached to discussing having had a paranormal encounter, whether it's a ghost or extraterrestrial or cryptozoological. The stigma has pretty much been removed. 20 years ago, you say, I saw a ghost, or I saw an alien, or I saw, Bigfoot. People would have thought you were crazy. And in fact, when I had my encounter, I was in the military, and I didn't dare say a word for fear that I was going to be sent in for a psych evaluation. That's how tight the stigma was back then. And so paranormal TV has brought with it an acceptance in the field. People can openly discuss having had this encounter without being shunned or committed to mental institutions because they legitimately believe that they had this experience. And there's a wealth of investigators out there now that can go in and say, we believe you're having this experience. Let's find out what it is. The downside to the paranormal TV, particularly right now, is there are a lot of shows out there that have some really unethical practices, and people who are just starting out in the field, or even some people that have been in the field for a while, but really don't think about, what they're seeing. They're taking everything at face value. They're adopting some of these unethical practices, like provoking and being rude to your surroundings, whether there's an entity there or not. Walking up, and demanding that someone talk to you is not going to get you very good results. If I were to walk up to you, Ash, on the street, and you've never seen me before, you've never met me before, and I walk up to you and demand that you talk to me, you're not going to be so inclined to talk to me.
I have no spine, Clarissa. I would talk to you in a second.
And talk he will, and nonstop.
In fact, you'll regret it almost immediately, because then you'll be like, he's talking back ad nauseum. We need this man to stop.
Well, and the same goes with referring to them as dead people or deceased people, or even referring to them as ghosts or spirits when we're trying to communicate with them. If I were to walk up to you and say, how did you die? That's not going to make you very happy, because to the best of your knowledge, you're not dead. And I legitimately believe that a lot of the spirits that we encounter, the genuine spirits, not the naturally occurring stuff that we've been able to debunk, but a lot of the spirits that we encounter are not aware that they're dead.
Huh.
And so That begs the question then, is it our place to tell them? You see people on television and on YouTube all the time. I see it on YouTube so many times. I really can't stand watching the investigation YouTube videos anymore because of how bad they do it. But they'll walk into a room and say, "Are there any spirits here that want to talk to us?" Well, if I walked into a room with the three of you guys and said, "Are there any spirits here that want to talk to us?" you guys are going to be quiet because, to the best of your knowledge, you're not a spirit.
Right. True.
That might actually be one of the first times I have heard someone approach it that way. And I'm being completely honest. I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass.
Yeah.
Although I do love to say the phrase "blowing smoke up your ass."
Yes, you do.
So I'll say it as much as actually
you do.
possible.
Right.
But that is an approach that I really haven't heard before. It seems to be that there is a mainstay that, baseline is that we're approaching this as if every aspect of it is cognizant, every aspect of it has this brand of self-awareness. Yeah. Now, this might be a little off track, but I definitely wanted to get to it because it seems as though once you start immersing yourself in something like the paranormal, or like anything, once you start writing, for example, you suddenly find that you're surrounded by writers and you never knew it. Or you suddenly go places and all of a sudden it's like, wow, basically this is a writer's meeting, but I didn't even realize it. It's like by proxy you seem to attract what you're interested in. But when we start talking about the paranormal, that becomes even more interesting and even more bizarre because I do feel like once there's this openness, you almost become like a beacon. And once you become a beacon, like let the high strangeness totally begin because things will suddenly occur and happen that you had no idea that you were open to initially. So you touched upon the subject a little bit that, there are these sort of divided camps. People look at ghosts, people look at ETs, people look at Bigfoot. So since you've started being more active, what's some of the things that you've seen or experienced where you've thought to yourself, okay, we can check that one off because I never thought that would happen?
Yeah, that would probably be the story that I tell when people ask me, what's your scariest encounter?
Because nobody ever asked you that question.
Right.
Well, I get asked it all the time, and really, it's not that scary to you. It was scary to me, and I'll tell the story and explain why it was scary. We were investigating a 3-story farmhouse in rural Colorado. There were 10 of us on scene. That's how big the location was. It could accommodate 10 investigators comfortably investigating. And every single person was having a personal experience that was tailored to their comfort zone, tailored to their threshold. So the people that were unnerved by being touched were getting touched. The people that were unnerved by seeing things were seeing things. The people that were unnerved by hearing things were hearing things. And I've been doing this so long, I'm really desensitized to all of it. It takes a lot to get under my skin. And so I was kind of bummed. I'm like, I'm not having any experiences. This is kind of lame for me. I'm just going around doing my thing and everybody else is getting, the jump scares. And earlier in the evening, the building had electricity but no heat. And so we decided, we were going to light a fire in the wood burning stove. In order to do that, we had to clear out a whole mess of dead birds that had fallen victim to the stovepipe. And we got that cleared out, got the fire lit, got the house heated up. And later that evening, I'm in the attic space with 2 other investigators. And I see, using night vision equipment, I was using a night owl monocular. I saw in this attic space what looked like a dead bird on the floor. And it turned out to be a piece of crumpled up black garbage bag. But, using the night vision equipment and from a distance, it looked like a dead bird. And you go and you hear the audio file. And the audio recorder was a good 15 feet away from me. And so you hear the audio file and you hear me go, "Ew, what is that?" And then I say, "Hey, is there a dead bird in here?" And you hear the other investigators go, "Oh no, I don't know where." But in between that, right after I say, "Ew, what is that?" this voice, this really menacing voice goes, "Dead bird."
Wow.
And so it wasn't until I got home and was going over the audio files that I had my personal experience, because whoever was there was in my head. And it's scary enough with just me in here. But, to know that, whoever was there, they were in my head as well. That to me was terrifying.
Yeah.
We had an experience not unlike that a few years ago. Now, this is upwards of 12 or 13 years ago, Clarissa. But back when I was on the East Coast, I had a show that didn't even really touch on horror films. Where here we do horror films and the paranormal and genre topics. But it was exclusively devoted and dedicated to the paranormal back then. And we were talking with a Missouri author about a story that had been related to him. There was a young woman who, strangely enough, was hearing people talk to her in the shower. And it was aggressive. It was always an aggressive tone.
Right.
And it was always very sort of menacing, and she was getting scared. Now, we were in the studio, not set up too much differently than where we are now, where we had multiple mics and a lot of equipment. And he had started to describe some of the noises that she was hearing. And one was sort of like this raspy growl. Now, as he's describing this, we hear, sort of like disembodied within our studio, almost the exact same raspy growl, but obviously not his voice. It was sort of the same tone, but definitely from from different vocal cords. And we even went back post to see if we could get the audio, and strangely enough, everything was showing up on our mics, our individual voices, any audio clips we had loaded up, except for that growl.
Really?
Even though not only did we hear it, but our live audience heard it. And that was the strange thing. It was picking it up live, but yet in post, none of the microphones picked it up.
Wow. That is insane.
And we had a few instances like that. So it's strange because there's that gulf. There's that gap where really, what does the technology do? What is it responsible for? I think there's still so much to learn that we're still sort of throwing darts in the dark here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is no conclusive, proven, solid methodology yet. Each team, pretty much runs on their own, on their own belief system and their own practices. There are some that do try to, just as we do, they try to utilize the scientific method whenever possible. There are others that, believe that using a psychic medium, every time is the way to go. But again, how do you prove that? And then there are others that go out and spend, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on equipment that they don't know how to properly use. So,
right. And now what they can do also is we've set up a fund, which is for us, and they can send us that audio equipment. And what we'll do is we'll take it, and when we take it, we won't contact them again.
Yes.
That's basically the process that we currently have. So I'll give out my personal address, which will look like John Gardner or Jim Chandler's, our co-host address.
Exactly.
I do never, but it's mine. And you can send all the audio equipment that you might have there. If it is thousands of dollars, I will definitely accept that as a donation.
Absolutely.
Now we were also taking a look at your bio as well, Clarissa, and something that interested me was that you also figure the Bible into your work. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And after this, we'll talk about politics too, because we don't want to piss anybody.
Yeah. No, I'm also an ordained minister.
Really?
And how that came about was we were getting a lot of clients that were constantly telling us, this goes against everything that that my preacher says, this goes against everything I learned in Sunday school, this goes against everything that that I was taught to believe, based on my religion. And in talking to them, they have a Christianity-based faith, whether it's Catholicism or being a Baptist or a Lutheran or some form of Christianity. And I can go in and quote scripture until I'm blue in the face, but because I'm the crazy ghost lady, they're not really going to listen. But, because I, have that nifty little title of Reverend before my name. And I did it the old school way. I actually went to seminary and became ordained that way. I didn't, just sign up online and get a mail order certificate. I actually did it the hard way. And so because I, have that nifty little title attached to me, it's better received by the clients. When you're being quoted scripture from a person by a clergy person, it's going to be a little better received than being quoted scripture by the crazy ghost lady, even though they're one and the same.
Sure.
So one of the things that I am called on to talk about, pretty frequently, is ghosts in the Bible, and how they interact and correlate and pertain to each other. And, do are ghosts mentioned in the Bible outside of the Holy Ghost? Absolutely. And, but we could do an entire show on that topic.
Well, I find it interesting because we seem to be dealing with a lot of absolutism in this country right now, specifically, where if we have a belief that classically isn't supposed to blend with another belief, that's where the absolutism comes in. Well, you can't be this and this at the same time. You have to be this or this. And I've always found, first of all, that to be extremely limiting.
Yeah.
I think that we should have the ability, because we're sentient human beings, to cherry pick if we really want to, because it really is our choice to take in certain beliefs and decide that certain beliefs don't work for our own system. Do you get a lot of that? Do you get people sometimes that, I know you said that because of your background, people are more open to the idea, but do you have people who sort of look at you and go, hey, you can't be that. You can't be this and be that?
Yeah, I actually did a radio show a couple of months ago. I was a guest on a show, and the show host actually on the air called me a hypocrite.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go on the record and say that they definitely weren't as charming as I am.
That's right.
No.
You're
no,
charming,
definitely not.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it.
How much did he pay you to say that?
Jim gets $5 every time he says
Every
that.
time.
Wow.
Right.
It's for gas money.
This is what
Why do you
happens
think
when
I'm
I come
taking
late.
donations for all this audio equipment? I have to pay Jim for his lip service, for God's
There you
sake.
go.
Why do you think he's having it sent to my house?
Now, I know that we get into industries because there are things that we want to see or we want to experience, and I think that is very much the case with a lot of people who are interested in the paranormal. Is there something that you've wanted to encounter or wanted to experience that you have not yet?
Well, I'm always looking for, the Holy Grail, to experience that in person. And I have once, but, of course it's like, your first taste of narcotic, you want to do it again and again and again.
John!
Don't look at me. I mean,
And so, there's always the Holy Grail, having that full-bodied apparition experience. And like I said, I have had that encounter once. But again, like I said, what lights the fire under us as an organization is, that one audio clip or that one video clip or, the one personal experience that everybody saw and encountered, that really, keeps us motivated and keeps us going.
Now, this is something that we don't usually hear as questions being posed to guests, but it's always interested me. Have you seen any instances of true chicanery? Have you seen any instances of people who were definitely faking experiences? And if so, how did that affect you and what did you do?
Yeah, we've had experiences like that, and one of the first red flags when we're considering taking a case is when we do the client contact and the first thing they ask us is, do you have a TV show or are you affiliated with the people on TV?
Yeah, it's pretty.
There you go.
That's a big flag.
Yeah, and we tell them no, and for the most part, they're either relieved, okay, good, I don't want camera crews here at my house, or they're like, oh well, that's a real bummer. Well, do you still want us to investigate your your place. And there are a few that say, yes, absolutely. And we had a client a few years ago, it was about 10 years ago actually, that they went to really extensive lengths, to include, putting speakers in their walls to try to, get us. And, unfortunately, there were a couple of places where they didn't hide the speaker wire very well, and we were able to, trace it and,
Amateurs.
and everything. And we're like, okay, yeah, we're done here. You're faking it. And they were so insistent that they kept calling other teams. and what they don't realize is that, some of these they were telling the other teams, we had CCPI come in and they said, that there's nothing going on here, and they left, etc. And so the other teams were calling me going, the XYZ family called us in to investigate this location and said, you've already been there. And, and then I explained to them, yes, we were there. Yeah, this is what we encountered. This is, what we found. And they started getting really upset when these other teams were going back to them saying, you know what, you got the best service possible the first time around. And so we're not even going to waste our time.
Good.
And until they finally got a brand new, fresh out of the gate rookie fly-by-night investigation team that went in there, bought the smoke and mirror show, and started posting all over the internet that, yes, this house is haunted.
That's what they wanted.
We've experienced what some people call this idea of a quickening, or reaching sort of a paranormal 0 point. A lot of people believe that we're actually getting more paranormal experiences, that we're seeing an escalation of something, but we don't know what it is. And then there's another camp that, personally, I fall into the other camp.
Okay.
And the other camp is I think we just have more information. I think we have a greater information flow through. The pipeline is open. Where do you sit on that?
Is it that we have more people having more experiences, or more people are talking about the experiences that they're having? Keep in mind, up to, 20 years ago, just discussing this was taboo. Yep. And people, who were having experiences were, frightened and not talking about it. So the number of encounters going on, could be the same. It's just that now more people are talking about it. And it's more okay to discuss having had these experiences. It is okay to call in an investigation team to check out what you're experiencing. Whereas, 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, it was not okay to do that. So, is it that the activity is increasing, or it's the number of people that are talking about it is increasing?
I think we also have accessibility to devices that, for example, we didn't have. We were talking about, advents of certain technology and how they've obviously expanded the field and changed it. But I think they've also changed the perceptions that the common person has about how we capture life, how we capture moments, and that we've got this greater level of accessibility than we've never had before, where we're not reaching for a video camera. We've got a device on us that basically can record anything at any point in time, and we've never really had that, at least as far as we know anyways, in the history of human development. Have we been so attached to one particular device that chronicles almost everything that we do?
Yeah, absolutely. Gotta thank the inventors of the cell phone.
Well, it's kind of like tornadoes, and film footage of tornadoes years ago. You used to hear about tornadoes, and it was rare that you ever saw footage. And then the video camera comes out, and then all of a sudden there's really amazing footage. And so I kind of think that maybe that's the same with this too. It's that you have that accessibility to technology, that you see something and you can turn it on instantly. And you do. I think that's true. I think that's absolutely true.
Now, we've talked about your personal experiences and things that have sort of been benchmarks in your career. Let's take a look at maybe something that has been a third party experience. You obviously have a lot of people that probably come to you and say, "Listen, I'm experiencing this. This is something that I've experienced in the past," or "Hey, I've got a story for you," which usually starts out with, "You might think I'm crazy." What has the one thing that you've heard that just really blew you away? Not only because maybe it's sincerity, but just you're sitting there going, "Wow, that's a fantastic story, and it has a level of believability to it."
Well, the one that I get the most often isn't necessarily "you're going to think I'm crazy." It's "you got to go check out this place where I used to live." And it's like, you don't live there anymore. It does me no good. I can't just,
Right.
walk up and knock on a door and say, "Hey, Jane Doe used to live here. Can I come check it for ghosts?" Um,
The old Crawford.
so,
Oh yeah.
I get that a lot. You got to go check out this place where I used to live, or this place where my grandma used to live. That does me no good. But there are a lot of encounters that I have heard about. I have a lot of really close colleagues in the field, and some of the stories that they have told will just blow your mind. Now there are others out there, that know how to weave a yarn and can, pull your leg and just totally fabricate, something out of the blue. But the people that I consider to be legitimate investigators, my close personal colleagues, have had some really interesting experiences, as have I. And so, that is one of the things that we enjoy doing, is sitting around and talking about some of the stuff that we've experienced, and, comparing notes, or providing, theories or ideas or suggestions based on other people's experiences.
We had brushed upon, and just very lightly, this spectrum of things that sometimes both maybe accurately and loosely fall under the paranormal. We start talking about cryptids. We start talking about the idea of extraterrestrials. The idea of extraterrestrials has always fascinated me, and more so because we have this weird delineation between this whole brick and mortar sort of nuts and bolts approach to what UFOs and aliens are, where people can look in the sky and they can say, "Okay, there's a light. There's a light that I don't know what it is." And then it gets closer and they understand that that light is attached to a craft. And these are all things that, as humans with a degree of technological sophistication, we understand, hey, this makes sense. This makes sense in my mindset, and in my frame of the world it makes sense. And then we start to pass that into this idea where suddenly we have close encounters of the third kind, and then we suddenly have abduction experiences, and suddenly this idea of the nuts and bolts approach to UFOs and aliens takes a sharp right turn, where we start talking about these entities being able to pass through solid objects. We talk about stuff like telekinesis. We start talking about technology that borders on the supernatural. Do you think that there is a supernatural or paranormal aspect to it, or do you think that it's just a preternatural sophistication that we're not capable of understanding?
Well, as far as extraterrestrials go, they're going to remain paranormal until, we end up with that concrete data that definitively says, we are not alone in the universe. Whether it's a government revelation or an encounter that cannot be covered up readily, until we get that revelation, until, it's going to remain paranormal in nature because it cannot be scientifically documented, proven, etc. So, there are a lot of people out there, though, that do believe in, they believe that extraterrestrials are out in our skies, in our orbit, in our atmosphere, all the time, daytime, nighttime, all the time. There are people, more and more people coming forward claiming that they've had abduction experiences. Um, and I personally have never seen an extraterrestrial. I've not had an abduction experience. I've not seen a UFO. My sweetheart came from the East Coast, relatively big city. That not a lot of stars out there. And the first time, out here in Colorado and seeing, stars by, by the trillions for the first time, it's like, oh, I see a UFO. It's like, no, that's a satellite.
Nice.
And, oh, I see another one. No, it's a satellite, and so it was really cool, to watch an experience and to see the excitement. But at the same time, had to totally burst the bubble and say, no, it's not ET, it's a satellite. It's totally man-made.
Now, you've had a lot on your plate, obviously. You've got a really long resume as far as your association with the paranormal goes. What is next for you? What do you have going on right now? What can people expect?
Definitely expect more books. I've got 6 books out on the market right now about ghosts and the paranormal. Definitely expect more books. I have been in the past on the paranormal lecture circuit, and I'm going to try to get back on that lecture circuit starting in 2020. So hopefully I'll be making some public appearances here pretty soon. For the most part, just expect to see me pop up on various radio programs, saying hi and talking about what I know, and but for sure, there are more books in the works, and so definitely more really good literature to check out.
Now, do you have a few moments off the air for us?
Yeah, of course.
Great. Now, as far as people who are interested in what you've got going on and obviously what you're going to be doing in the future, where can they access this information? Facebook, a website? What can we give to the audience so that they can follow up?
The best way to find me right now is going to be through the CCPI Facebook page. We just learned over the weekend that there's something going on with our official website. It's not working for some reason. I need to investigate that and find out, what's going on with that. But if you go to facebook.com/Colo Paranormal, COLO Paranormal, that's the page for the Colorado Coalition of Paranormal Investigators. We do live updates from some of our investigations. We share some of our data on that page. You can always contact me through that page if you need to. And lots of really good stuff, lots of really funny stuff too. We don't hesitate to share the ghost memes on there. Yeah, that's the best way to find me.
Well, we want to thank you so much for being on with us tonight. We definitely would love to have you back because I think there's a lot more ground to cover here. For those that are listening, please stick around. We're going to take a brief break. We are coming back next hour. We have Rob Bastilli, who is a long-time friend of the show, and he will be talking about, we're bridging the gap between horror films and paranormal. We're talking about paranormal locations that inspired horror films.
Nice.
Very excited for that. So you have just a moment again for us, Clarissa?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thanks so much. Everyone else who's listening live, stick around. We'll be back in just a few.